Hello, I'm Ron Minatrea, and this is week 8 of Outpost. Welcome. Last time we talked about branding and the power of brands and the way that a person's reputation can affect a brand, or the way a brand can affect a person's reputation. We also began to talk about what are the things that might challenge our brand as a church, as believers. Remember the young man who said, "I know what you guys hate. I just don't know what you're for." So this week, I want to begin to talk about how do we want to be known and how do we make that happen. And in doing that, I want to say this first off. I want to more start a conversation, get everybody thinking, maybe envision you to how to answer that question, not be definitive, because there are a lot of right answers to that question and they vary by individual. Now, every time I think about brands, I remember a story of something that happened to me a few years ago when I was working with a business client on helping them to rebrand their company. As we did that, I had taken a break and gone for a quick doctor's appointment, and as I pulled out from the doctor, I remember seeing out of the corner of my eye as I was pulling onto the highway a sign for a donut shop. Now, I knew that's where you go to get donuts. Honestly, I didn't know they had a sign. I didn't know the name of the shop. And I still don't. I cannot to this day remember the name of that donut shop, but I know that's where you go to get donuts. And I thought, what a powerful branding story this is, that even without knowing their name, I know that's where you get donuts. And then I began to try to think through, how is it that that happens? How can I make that happen for my client or even for my own business? So I started analyzing. I said, well, maybe it's their location. And then I recalled that right across the street is a grocery store that also sells donuts. So it's not location. But then I thought, it's probably the selection. You know, I love their plain glazed donuts there, and they've got chocolate ice, and they've got the ones for with sprinkles on them, but they have the same thing across the street still. So that's important to me, but it's not the reason that I think of them for donuts. Well, maybe it's the price. No, that's not what it is, because they're about the same at both places. And then I remembered the guy that makes those donuts at the donut shop gets there every morning at 3 o'clock, and he makes those donuts that day, and they're fresh every morning. But the donuts across the street were probably made at least the day before, sometimes 2 days before. They're just not as fresh. And that ability to stand out was really important to me, going, that's where you go to get donuts. And it's the same thing with our branding. You see, there are things that are important to the people that we work with, but they may not be unique to us. It's important that we have those things. You know, we have to have that like the ante to get into the game. But if we're going to stand out, if we're going to be known for something, we're probably going to have something that is unique on top of that. So I started putting this into a 2x2 matrix, so you can think about it. On one scale is everything that's important, or how important it is to the customer, and the other would be how unique it is. And if you start working to that, to the right-hand side, you'll see that I want to know both what's important, but not unique, but also what is important and unique. And that's where I want to begin to focus on how to create the strongest, most powerful brand that I can. So, given that, what is it that we want to be known for? What's important and what's unique about us? Well, I first think, well, we're made in the image of Christ, and we bear the name of Christ as Christians, so that's got to be part of how we want to be known. The problem with that is, I remember pictures or images I had of Jesus that were on cards and cartoons and paintings when I was a kid, and just being honest, they weren't real compelling to me. As a little boy, I could see a picture of Jesus dressed like that, and then I'd see a picture of John Wayne, and honestly, John Wayne was much more compelling to me. But over time, I began to realize it wasn't the image of Christ in that picture, which quite frankly wasn't an accurate picture. It was the character of Christ, and that is compelling. So what we want is the character of Christ. But then we can have that character displayed and expressed in our own uniqueness. Remember all this discussion we've had over the weeks about our vocational DNA. You know, there are some people who reflect Christ and they're introverts. There's others who reflect Christ and they're extroverts. That's okay. It means we're able to appeal and reach to more people with our own personalities as they're shaped like Christ, as long as we have the character of Christ. Now, There's another piece of this branding equation that I think is really important and quite frankly about as simple as it gets. Because Jesus' own words were, "They will know you're my disciples by your love." Now, how does that play with the guy who says, "Well, I know what you hate, but I don't know what you're for"? See, that says we've got work to do. Because Jesus says, "I want people to know you by your love." Love for each other as well as love for people in general. There are other things that the Bible also mentions, though. In fact, I can think of at least 3 times that the Bible mentions that we should be careful to think about or understand what outsiders, people that are not believers, are thinking about us. In one case, the Bible says that we should be careful to consider what outside people think and make sure that they see us living lives that are worthy of respect. In another location, it says, make sure that your behavior is honorable. It's above reproach. And in yet another location, it says, be careful what outsiders think about you. Make sure that your conversation is always full of grace. Make sure that it's inviting, if you will, that it's gracious. So we need to make sure that we are living worthy of respect, with honorable lives, and inviting. And those ought to be characteristics of our brand. Now, one other thing I'll say about branding is, what if every Christian you knew was exhibiting all of the character of the fruit of the Spirit? See, if you had this whole group of people that were known for their joy and their peace and their patience and their kindness and their gentleness, their self-control, think about it. You go, man, they're one of them. That's how we want to be known. So we want to see the fruit of the Spirit living out and being expressed in our lives. So if we start to understand how we want to be known, the next question in our set of questions we've been trying to answer is, what is it we have to offer other people, and how does it benefit them? Now, as we began that discussion, I put up a slide in our class that was made actually the first time we took a group of men through this, and we said, how do we want to be known? What is it that we have to offer? And they said, well, we have the cross, or we're a new creation, or we've got new life or freedom and all these things. And you go, yep, that's right, we do. And they're important when you understand them. But if you just talk about them to someone who doesn't understand them, they probably don't mean much. They're probably not real compelling. So we said, how do we get something that we can express all the value, but do it in a way that connects better with our audience, if you will, those people who don't yet know the Lord? Now, in doing that, we started talking about products and features and benefits. Take, for instance, this car. Some people see that and go, well, that's a product, and the product is the car. Other people go, no, that's transportation. And still other people would look at that and go, no, that is freedom. It's the ability for me to make a living. It's ability for me to have a whole different way of life. And you see, that's the way people see products. Depending on their perspective, it's either functional and very transactional. It may be, though, very conceptual and even inspirational. And so we need to understand how to present what we have to offer in a way that connects with the need of the people we're talking to. Now, to get to that point, let me talk about the difference between features and benefits. Now, features are what a product can do. The benefits are why the customer would care. What is it in it for them? So let's go back to our donut shop. Features are generally talked about from a seller's perspective, right? Because it's something they're proud of. We make this, we do this, and we naturally want to talk about that. But what if the guy that opens up the donut shop every morning at 3 a.m. advertised, I'm here every morning at 3 a.m., I get up, I lose sleep, that's the feature? We would probably go, well, we really feel for you, but it doesn't mean much to us. On the other hand, if he says, we have our donuts fresh for you every day, now it means something to me. See, one of them is a feature, one of them is a benefit. One's from a seller's perspective, one is from the customer's perspective. And here's the thing, benefits change based on the eye of the beholder. So, for instance, if I have a feature in this car, let's say, I say, man, we've got rear air conditioning controls. We can set that air as wherever we want from the back seat, and there's a lot of air vents in the back. Is that a great benefit? Well, if I'm a salesman and I drive all the time completely by myself and no one's ever in the back seat of my car, that feature is not a great benefit to me. On the other hand, if I'm a real estate agent and I'm constantly driving around, chauffeuring my potential clients around, and I want them to be comfortable and they're regularly in the back seat, then that feature is of great benefit to me. And that's the point. The benefits are weighed in the eye of the beholder. So we need to understand who is the beholder and what's important to them in order for us to understand how we can best present what it is that we have to offer. And what they think they need, or their most obvious need, may be only masking an underlying need, right? So we need to understand not only what do they say they want, or what are they presenting that they want, but what's the driver for why they want that. And if we can understand that, we can begin to connect with that. You see, people normally present and talk about the fact that what's on the surface, but they usually make a decision based on what's underneath the surface. Now, lastly, I want to talk about what I call the horizon of needs and benefits. So if I have a need because my kids are sick, my wife's in the hospital, or we just don't have enough money to make ends meet and can't buy food this week, that's a very short-term need. If I come to someone in that need and I begin to talk to them about eternal life, I'm talking about a long-term benefit, and I've mismatched the horizon of the need with the benefit. So if we're going to do that, and sometimes we might, we need to be very intentional about it, very wise on how we do that. But otherwise, we probably want to make sure that we're connecting the benefits and the horizon of those benefits with their needs. Now, there's a real important part of this, and that is to understand who is my target market. And that's one of the questions in this week's worksheet. So I encourage you to take a time now and begin to think about who is your target market and what are the things that they need, what would benefit them. And then make plans to join us when we'll talk about those things in our next installment of Outpost.